The supplement industry is worth $177 billion a year. Almost none of it required proof. Here's every capsule, powder, and tincture that got rich while the evidence stayed empty. 1. You have been drinking expensive laxatives and calling it wellness, and the industry has been counting on you to never read the label closely enough to notice. Detox teas are one of the most profitable lies in supplement history, and they work entirely because the word detox sounds clinical, purposeful, and vaguely medical, when in reality, it is a term the FDA does not define, does not regulate, and has never required any company to substantiate before printing it on a box. Your liver processes approximately 1.4 liters of blood every single minute. It removes metabolic waste continuously without a tea bag, without your help, and without charging you a monthly subscription. The active ingredient in most detox teas is not some rare botanical compound doing quiet cellular repair work. It is senna, a pharmaceutical-grade laxative used in clinical settings to prep patients for colonoscopies, now rebranded as a morning ritual and sold next to the kombucha. The European Food Safety Authority has repeatedly rejected health claims linking herbal teas to liver detoxification. Multiple cases of acute liver injury documented in medical literature have been tied specifically to detox herbal blends containing comfrey, kava, and high-dose green tea extract. The global detox tea market was valued at over $3.2 billion in 2023, sustained almost entirely by influencer marketing and the specific human vulnerability of wanting to believe that one bad weekend can be undone by something warm in a mug. Your liver is not a swamp. It is a sophisticated filtration system that has never once needed your help or your $30 box of senna in a floral pouch. The only thing getting cleansed is your bank account. 2. You have been stirring a powder into your morning coffee and waiting for your skin to look younger, and the entire premise rests on a misunderstanding of how your digestive system handles protein. Collagen powder is a protein. When you eat protein, your digestive system breaks it into amino acids. It does not read the label, identify the source as marine collagen for skin elasticity, and route those amino acids preferentially toward your dermis like a biological GPS delivery system. Collagen is a triple helix protein with a molecular weight of approximately 300,000 Daltons, far too large to be absorbed intact through the intestinal wall under any normal digestive circumstance. When it is broken down, it yields primarily glycine, proline, and hydroxyproline. Amino acids also found in cheap gelatin and bone broth, which nobody is currently marketing at $45 per canister. A 2019 review in the Journal of Drugs and Dermatology found that most positive collagen supplement trials were funded by collagen manufacturers, introducing a level of publication bias that should make you pause before the next scoop. Your skin's dermis produces its own collagen through fibroblast cells, and the primary enemies of that process are ultraviolet radiation and smoking, neither of which a powder dissolves. Hydrolyzed collagen peptides do circulate briefly in the bloodstream after digestion, and whether they reach the dermis and stimulate local fibroblasts at meaningful concentrations is a question the research community describes as contested, which is a polite way of saying the evidence is not there yet. The global collagen supplement market exceeded $9 billion in 2023. Pouring this into your coffee and expecting younger skin is like mailing bricks to a construction site and expecting someone to build a house in your face. The bricks will arrive somewhere, the house is not coming. 3. The hair supplement aisle has convinced an enormous number of people that the reason their hair is thinning is that they are not consuming enough of a B vitamin that most of them are already getting in sufficient quantities from food, and that the solution is a capsule containing up to 333 times the established daily requirement. Biotin deficiency is genuinely rare in adults eating a varied diet. True deficiency is most commonly seen in people with rare genetic disorders affecting biotin metabolism, or in individuals consuming large quantities of raw egg whites over an extended period. The recommended daily intake of biotin is 30 micrograms. Most commercial hair growth supplements contain 5,000 to 10,000 micrograms per serving. Supplementing a nutrient you are not deficient in produces no measurable benefit, which is not a fringe position but a foundational principle of nutritional biochemistry. A 2017 review in Skin Appendage Disorders found that evidence supporting biotin supplementation for hair or nail growth in non-deficient individuals was limited to small, uncontrolled case series, which is the lowest rung of the clinical evidence ladder. Hair loss in adults is overwhelmingly driven by androgenetic alopecia, which is DHT sensitivity, or by autoimmune conditions, thyroid dysfunction, or iron deficiency. Biotin addresses none of those mechanisms. What biotin does address in high doses is your laboratory results. The FDA has issued formal warnings that high-dose biotin supplements can critically interfere with troponin tests used to diagnose heart attacks, potentially producing false negatives in emergency settings. The hair supplement market generates over $1.8 billion annually, with biotin on the front label of roughly 80% of products sold. Taking 10,000 micrograms of biotin because your hair is thinning is like pouring premium fuel into a car with a broken engine. The fuel is fine, the engine is the problem. Nothing about the fuel repairs the engine. 4. The entire raspberry ketone supplement industry was launched by a single television appearance and a single rodent study, and the rodent study required doses that would translate to a human consuming roughly 90 kilograms of raspberries per day to replicate the experimental conditions. Raspberry ketones are aromatic compounds responsible for the scent of raspberries. They share a structural similarity to synephrine, which sparked speculation about metabolic effects, and that speculation traveled from laboratory to supplement shelf at a speed that had nothing to do with human clinical evidence. The primary study cited in marketing was a 2005 Japanese mouse study showing reduced fat accumulation conducted in vitro at doses with no human pharmacokinetic equivalent. A 2013 randomized controlled trial published in the Journal of the International Society of Sports Nutrition found no significant difference in weight loss between raspberry ketone groups and placebo. The supplement surged globally after a high-profile television endorsement in 2012. Sales reportedly exceeded $100 million within weeks of the broadcast, because that is the speed at which a television appearance can build an evidence-free industry. The Federal Trade Commission has taken action against multiple raspberry ketone marketers for deceptive advertising claims. The actual quantity of raspberry ketone in dietary raspberries is measured in micrograms. Supplement doses are marketed in the hundreds of milligrams with no established safe or effective dose in humans. There was never a clinical trial that said this worked. There was a mouse, a television show, and a marketing department that understood your desire to lose weight faster than the science could catch up. You were buying a berry-scented television segment in capsule form, and the only thing that burned was the $25 you handed over at checkout. 5. Activated charcoal is a legitimate medical tool used in emergency rooms for acute poisoning cases, and the supplement industry took that specific, time-limited, crisis intervention use case and transformed it into a daily wellness product that does not know the difference between a toxin it should capture and the medication you actually need. Activated charcoal works through adsorption, binding compounds to its porous surface in the gastrointestinal tract before they are absorbed into the bloodstream. Emergency medical protocols use single-dose activated charcoal within 1 to 2 hours of specific acute toxic ingestions. It is not used as a continuous supplement in any clinical setting anywhere. When you take it daily, activated charcoal binds non-selectively, meaning it significantly reduces the absorption of prescription medications, oral contraceptives, and vitamins taken within several hours of ingestion. There is no peer-reviewed evidence that activated charcoal reduces hangover symptoms. Ethanol is absorbed rapidly long before charcoal can intercept it, which means the hangover cure claim fails at the most basic pharmacokinetic level. The FDA has not approved any activated charcoal product for detoxification, hangover prevention, or general wellness use. Multiple products have received warning letters for disease claim violations. The daily detox and hangover cure activated charcoal market generates hundreds of millions annually, sustained primarily by black aesthetic packaging and social media virality, because the color makes it look powerful and the mechanism sounds plausible until you look at it for more than 30 seconds. Taking daily activated charcoal for wellness is like running a powerful industrial vacuum through your living room every morning. Useful in an actual emergency, counterproductive as a lifestyle, completely incapable of distinguishing between the debris you wanted removed and the car keys you needed to keep. Your body does not have toxins waiting to be captured by a charcoal capsule. It has a liver, and the liver does not take the day off. 6. Homeopathy is a 230-year-old system of medicine built on the premise that water retains the energetic memory of a substance after extreme dilution, and modern chemistry has a very specific and non-negotiable response to that premise, which is that this is not how water or molecules work under any conditions, at any temperature, in any container. Samuel Hahnemann developed homeopathy in 1796, predating germ theory, cellular biology, and modern pharmacology by decades. The foundational concept was that like cures like, and that greater dilution increases potency, which is the opposite of how every other substance in pharmacology behaves. Standard homeopathic dilutions are expressed as 30C, meaning the original substance has been diluted by a factor of 10 to the power of 60. At 12C, statistically, not a single molecule of the original substance remains in the solution. You are taking water and calling it medicine, and that is not a metaphor. The National Health and Medical Research Council of Australia conducted a comprehensive 2015 systematic review of 1,800 studies and concluded there was no reliable evidence. Homeopathy was more effective than placebo for any health condition. The Federal Trade Commission issued a 2016 enforcement policy requiring homeopathic products to either present competent scientific evidence for their claims or clearly disclose that those claims are not based on modern scientific evidence. Despite this, the United States homeopathic market generates over $1.2 billion annually. Multiple meta-analyses in The Lancet and the British Medical Journal have found that when trials are of higher quality, the effect of homeopathic remedies consistently shrinks towards zero. Homeopathy asks you to believe that water can memorize medicine while simultaneously forgetting every sewage pipe it passed through to reach your tap. The logic only operates in one direction, and that direction happens to be the profitable one. 7. Garcinia cambogia was the supplement that sold an enzyme and called it a weight loss solution, and the gap between those two things turned out to be the entire point. The active ingredient is hydroxycitric acid, which, in laboratory settings, inhibits the enzyme ATP citrate lyase, which is involved in fatty acid synthesis. That is a real mechanism in a real cellular environment. The leap from inhibiting an enzyme in a petri dish to producing meaningful fat loss in a living human being is where the science collapsed entirely and the marketing took over. A landmark 12-week randomized controlled trial published in the Journal of the American Medical Association in 1998 enrolled 135 participants and found no significant difference in weight loss or fat mass between the Garcinia cambogia group and the placebo group. Multiple cases of acute liver injury linked to Garcinia cambogia supplements have been documented in medical literature and flagged by the FDA. The supplement experienced rapid commercial growth after high-profile television endorsements in the early 2010s. Global sales exceeded $500 million annually at peak, built on a foundation of one failed enzyme hypothesis and a television endorsement cycle that moved faster than any clinical replication could. The Federal Trade Commission brought enforcement actions against numerous Garcinia marketers for deceptive weight loss claims, resulting in multi-million-dollar settlements that the supplement industry absorbed as a cost of business and continued operating. The mechanism existed, the outcome did not. Those two things are not the same, and an industry worth hundreds of millions of dollars depended entirely on you not knowing the difference. Garcinia cambogia is laboratory science that stopped working the moment it left the laboratory, wrapped in a television endorsement, and sold to people who deserved a better explanation than a fruit rind and a primetime slot. 8. The foundational clinical study driving the green coffee bean extract industry was retracted, not questioned, not disputed. Retracted after the Federal Trade Commission investigated and found that the data had been manipulated by the researchers who produced it. This is not a minor regulatory footnote. This is the primary scientific basis for a supplement category that generated hundreds of millions of dollars in sales, built on research that could not be verified because the numbers did not hold up. The proposed active compound is chlorogenic acid, which, in theory, slows glucose absorption and may modestly affect metabolism. And that theoretical mechanism was enough to take a study from publication to mass commercial distribution in a timeline measured in months. The 2012 study published in Diabetes, Metabolic Syndrome, and Obesity reported significant weight loss from green coffee extract and became the primary clinical foundation for the category. The Federal Trade Commission investigated, found data irregularities, and the researchers were unable to verify key results. The paper was retracted. The primary researcher later settled with the Federal Trade Commission without admitting wrongdoing as part of a broader action against the supplement company that funded the research. Independent replication studies found the effects of chlorogenic acid on human weight loss to be negligible when controlling for caffeine content, meaning the modest effect that occasionally appeared was not the advertised mechanism at work, but the stimulant that was already in the product. Hundreds of millions of dollars in sales occurred between original publication and eventual retraction, because retraction moves slowly and supplement sales move at the speed of a morning television segment. You were not buying a health product. You were buying a press release that turned out to be fiction compressed into a capsule and sold at a markup. The science did not survive. The market did. 9. The testosterone booster supplement category is built on the very specific and highly exploitable gap between the phrase involved in testosterone metabolism and the phrase raises your testosterone, and no ingredient in any over-the-counter herbal product sold in this category has successfully crossed that gap in a well-designed clinical trial involving men with normal or low normal baseline levels. Tribulus terrestris was the foundational ingredient in the original testosterone booster category. A 2014 meta-analysis in the Journal of Dietary Supplements found it had no effect on testosterone levels in healthy men. Fenugreek extract shows some evidence of inhibiting enzymes that convert testosterone to estrogen, which could theoretically maintain existing levels rather than raise them above baseline, and maintaining what you already have is a different proposition than the marketing typically presents. Actual clinically low testosterone, formerly called hypogonadism, requires medical diagnosis and is treated with pharmaceutical testosterone replacement that is not available without a prescription and is not what the supplement aisle is selling. A 2020 study analyzing 50 commercially available testosterone booster supplements found that over 10% contained ingredients with potential adverse effects, and the majority of positive ingredient studies were conducted in animals or in populations with infertility or documented deficiency, not in healthy adult men buying supplements at a gym. The men's testosterone supplement market exceeds $1.8 billion globally. The placebo effect in testosterone-adjacent products is well documented. Men who believe they have taken a testosterone supplement demonstrate measurable changes in competitive behavior and self-reported energy, which is a remarkable outcome and also a complete endorsement of the placebo rather than the product. A testosterone booster is a very expensive way to feel like you did something about your testosterone without doing anything about your testosterone. The label works. The capsule does not. 10. The thermogenic fat burner category is selling you a concept that is technically real, physiologically trivial, and commercially packaged in a way that makes an extra 30 to 50 calories of daily expenditure sound like a metabolic transformation. Thermogenesis is a real process. Raising your core body temperature does burn calories. The problem is that any supplement ingredient that raises core temperature enough to matter will also raise your cardiovascular risk profile enough to matter, and the FDA removed the most effective thermogenic compound, ephedra, from the market in 2004 following numerous cardiac events and documented deaths. The industry responded by replacing ephedrine with synephrine and a constellation of other stimulant compounds with similar risk profiles and weaker evidence, which is a specific pattern worth recognizing. Caffeine, the primary active ingredient in most thermogenic products, has a documented thermogenic effect of approximately 3 to 4% increase in metabolic rate over several hours, which translates to roughly 30 to 50 extra calories per day. A 2011 Obesity Review's meta-analysis found that herbal thermogenic supplements produce modest short-term weight loss effects with no significant long-term benefit over placebo, accompanied by notable adverse event risks. Many thermogenic products contain proprietary blends, meaning ingredient quantities are not disclosed, making it functionally impossible for you to evaluate what dose of any compound you are actually receiving. Reported adverse effects submitted to the FDA include elevated heart rate, hypertension, anxiety, and, in rare cases, cardiac events. The thermogenic supplement adds approximately as much to your caloric burn as fidgeting at your desk throughout the workday. The difference is that fidgeting is free, requires no label reading, has no proprietary blend, and carries a substantially lower cardiovascular risk profile. You are paying premium prices for the approximate caloric expenditure of a mildly restless afternoon. 11. Acai berry supplements are a legitimate fruit with genuinely real antioxidant content that got kidnapped by an aggressive online marketing machine in the mid-2000s, dehydrated, compressed into a capsule, marked up several thousand%, and sold with claims that no peer-reviewed study had established for any specific human health outcome. Acai does have a high ORAC score, which stands for Oxygen Radical Absorbance Capacity, a laboratory measurement of antioxidant activity that does not translate directly or reliably into clinical health outcomes in humans. The concept that dietary antioxidants neutralize free radicals in a linear, dose-dependent way in living human tissue is a significant oversimplification that research has repeatedly declined to confirm. The Acai supplement boom of the mid-2000s was driven substantially by aggressive online affiliate marketing, including numerous free trial scams that enrolled consumers in recurring monthly billing arrangements without clear disclosure of the subscription terms. The Federal Trade Commission took action against multiple Acai supplement marketers for deceptive claims and unauthorized billing practices, resulting in tens of millions of dollars in refunds to consumers who had not fully understood what they were agreeing to. No clinical trial has demonstrated that Acai supplementation produces meaningful weight loss, anti-aging effects, or disease prevention in humans. Actual acai berries consumed as food contain fiber, healthy fats, and micronutrients. The freeze-dried processed powder inside most supplement capsules represents a fraction of the original whole food nutritional profile, and even that fraction was never clinically established to do what the marketing suggested. Acai is a perfectly fine berry. The supplement version is a perfectly fine berry that was processed, compressed, priced aggressively, and sold using a recurring credit card charge that required the FTC to get involved before anyone got their money back. The berry did not ask for any of this. 12. Oral HGH supplements are selling you a product that cannot deliver its stated mechanism because the molecule they are named after is destroyed by your stomach acid before it reaches anything it was supposed to affect. Human growth hormone is a 191 amino acid peptide hormone. Like all peptide hormones, it is rapidly broken down by digestive enzymes and cannot survive oral ingestion intact. This is not a dosing problem or a formulation problem. It is a fundamental biochemistry problem that no label design or proprietary blend can solve. What HGH releaser supplements typically contain is a combination of amino acids, primarily arginine, glutamine, and lysine, which in pharmacological intravenous doses have shown modest effects on growth hormone secretion in clinical research. The doses found in oral supplements are substantially lower than those intravenous amounts, and the oral route adds the additional barrier of digestive degradation before anything reaches the bloodstream. Actual HGH therapy is a prescription-only injectable medication used for genuine growth hormone deficiency. Prescribing it for anti-aging purposes is controversial and heavily regulated. The Federal Trade Commission has brought multiple enforcement actions against HGH supplement marketers, specifically targeting the implication that products produce effects comparable to pharmaceutical injectable HGH. The marketing language consistently uses phrases like supports your body's natural production to imply a clinically meaningful mechanism while technically avoiding the most specific prohibited claims, a regulatory tightrope the industry has walked for decades. The injectable HGH black market, entirely separate from the legal supplement category, is associated with serious side effects including carpal tunnel syndrome, joint pain, insulin resistance, and increased cancer risk. Buying an oral HGH supplement is scientifically equivalent to mailing yourself a steak and expecting the nutritional content to arrive through your mailbox. The concept requires your body to break multiple laws of biochemistry. Your body will not cooperate. 13. CoQ10 has a genuinely important role in how your cells produce energy, which is precisely the phrase the supplement industry uses to imply that taking more of it will give you more energy, and that implication is where the actual science gets left behind. Coenzyme Q10 is a real coenzyme in the mitochondrial electron transport chain, essential for ATP synthesis. In people on statin medications, which are known to reduce CoQ10 production, supplementation has legitimate and clinically supported applications. In people with the rare genetic condition causing CoQ10 deficiency, supplementation has clear medical relevance. For healthy adults with normal CoQ10 levels seeking energy or athletic performance enhancement, the evidence is substantially less supportive. A 2014 Cochrane review on CoQ10 and heart failure found insufficient evidence to support routine supplementation, with results across trials described as inconsistent. Multiple studies on CoQ10 and exercise performance in healthy adults have failed to show statistically significant improvements in VO2 max, power output, or subjective energy levels. The bioavailability of standard CoQ10 sold as ubiquinone is limited. The reduced form, ubiquinol, has better absorption characteristics, but supplement labels frequently do not distinguish between them, leaving the consumer with no reliable way to evaluate what they are actually purchasing. Supplement marketing consistently conflates two different claims: CoQ10 is essential for cellular energy production, which is true, and taking more CoQ10 will give you more energy, which is not supported by the evidence in non-deficient adults. Those two claims are not the same statement, and an industry generates significant revenue on the space between them. Your mitochondria already have sufficient CoQ10 to perform their function. Adding more is like installing extra spark plugs in an engine that already ignites correctly. The car does not accelerate. You spent money on parts your mechanic told you that you needed when you did not. 14. Kava root was banned or restricted in Germany, Switzerland, Canada, and the United Kingdom in the early 2000s, following reports of serious liver injury and liver failure linked to supplement use. And in the United States, it continued to be sold as natural stress relief with the liver warnings in the small print on the back of the label. The FDA issued a consumer advisory in 2002, noting the potential risk of severe liver injury associated with kava-containing dietary supplements. The European countries that restricted it did so because the case reports of liver failure were appearing in previously healthy individuals with no other identified risk factors, and the regulatory calculus came down on the side of caution. Traditional Pacific Islander kava consumption uses water-based extraction from fresh or green plant material and has a long documented history of use. Western supplement manufacturing frequently uses ethanol extraction from the entire root mass, potentially concentrating a different chemical profile than the traditional preparation, which is a detail the ancient plant wisdom marketing does not typically mention. The active compounds, called cavalactones, do have documented anxiolytic effects. Some meta-analyses have found kava more effective than placebo for generalized anxiety, which is the part the supplement industry tells you. The hepatic risk profile, documented in multiple case reports in the Annals of Internal Medicine and other peer-reviewed journals, including acute liver failure requiring transplantation, is the part that gets smaller text. Kava is not chamomile. It is a pharmacologically active compound with real effects and real risks that several countries looked at carefully and decided warranted prescription-level control. The United States market looked at those same countries' decisions and identified a commercial opportunity. That is not a recommendation. 15. The resveratrol anti-aging narrative was built substantially on research that later faced serious methodological questions, and the human trials that followed the animal studies have consistently failed to replicate the dramatic longevity effects that made this supplement category worth hundreds of millions of dollars in annual revenue. The story of resveratrol and sirtuins, the longevity-associated proteins it was supposed to activate, accelerated significantly following research suggesting that the compound could replicate aspects of caloric restriction and extend lifespan. In 2012, a Pfizer research team found that the fluorescent dye used in the original sirtuin activation assay artificially enhanced the apparent enzyme activation, meaning the foundational measurement of the effect was compromised by the experimental design. Early mouse and yeast studies showed lifespan extension. Subsequent studies in other organisms, including different mouse strains, produced inconsistent results that were less compatible with a clean, universal mechanism. A landmark 2014 study published in the Journal of the American Medical Association Internal Medicine tracked resveratrol levels in elderly Italian villagers over 9 years and found no correlation between higher resveratrol levels and lower rates of cancer, heart disease, or mortality. Human bioavailability of oral resveratrol is poor. It is rapidly metabolized and conjugated in the intestine and liver, with very little reaching target tissues in concentrations that would be biologically relevant. The amount of resveratrol in a glass of red wine is approximately 0.3 to 1.9 milligrams. Most supplements contain 250 to 500 milligrams. Neither dose has produced proven longevity outcomes in humans. GlaxoSmithKline acquired a resveratrol-focused biotech company for $720 million in 2008 and wrote down most of that investment by 2013 following multiple failed clinical trials. Your $30 bottle could not accomplish what a $720 million pharmaceutical investment could not. That is worth sitting with. 16. Spirulina is a legitimately nutritious food with real protein content and genuine micronutrients that is currently being sold as a pharmaceutical-grade cellular intervention for heavy metal detoxification and cancer prevention. And the second half of that description is where the evidence stops following along. Spirulina does contain all essential amino acids, B vitamins, iron, and phycocyanin, which is a pigment with some antioxidant properties in laboratory settings. The protein content is approximately 60 to 70% by dry weight, which is genuinely high for a plant-based source. A standard serving of 3 to 5 grams provides roughly 2 to 3 grams of protein, which is approximately comparable to a bite of chicken, not a dietary transformation. A common marketing claim is that spirulina chelates and removes heavy metals from the body. A 2018 review found no clinical evidence supporting this in humans at commercially relevant doses. Some spirulina products have been found to contain heavy metals, microcystins, which are liver toxins, produced by related cyanobacteria and other impurities, creating the specific irony of a product marketed to remove contaminants that itself contains the category of substance it claims to eliminate. Cancer prevention claims are based primarily on in vitro studies and animal models, with no established clinical translation to human oncology outcomes. The supplement is legitimately used in some malnutrition intervention contexts in populations with severe nutritional deficiency. That is a meaningful and different claim than optimal daily supplement for a healthy adult in a wealthy country who already eats sufficient protein. Spirulina is pond algae with a genuinely decent nutritional profile and a $40 per kilogram marketing upgrade. It is real food dressed up in pharmaceutical language, and the pharmaceutical claims are the part your body cannot process regardless of how many times the label says superfood. 17. After decades of study, the clinical picture on echinacea for cold prevention and treatment is best described as inconsistently inconclusive, which is a phrase that should appear in the marketing and does not. The echinacea supplement category encompasses at least 3 different species: Echinacea purpurea, Echinacea angustifolia, and Echinacea pallida, along with multiple plant parts including root, leaf, and aerial sections, each with different chemical profiles. Most studies examine different preparations, which makes meaningful comparison between trials nearly impossible and makes the cumulative evidence base substantially harder to interpret than a single product's label implies. A comprehensive 2015 Cochrane systematic review of 24 randomized controlled trials found highly inconsistent results, with some preparations showing modest benefit and many showing none at all. A rigorous 2005 randomized controlled trial published in the New England Journal of Medicine, enrolling over 400 participants, found no benefit of echinacea on rhinovirus infection frequency or severity using a well-controlled double-blind design. The core marketing concept of boosting the immune system is itself a construct with no precise clinical meaning. The immune system is a calibrated, context-dependent network. Non-specifically elevating immune activity would more accurately describe an inflammatory state or an autoimmune process than a desirable wellness outcome. Echinacea interacts with several immunosuppressant medications and is contraindicated in individuals with certain autoimmune conditions, which the wellness framing of natural immune support rarely prominently discloses. United States retail sales of echinacea supplements exceed $100 million annually. It is consistently among the top-selling herbal supplements in the country. The echinacea aisle is where "it can't hurt" goes to cost you $18 per box, absorb no regulatory scrutiny, and continue selling through 2 decades of inconsistent trial results. It might do something. The something has not reliably introduced itself to a well-designed clinical trial with any consistency, and that consistency gap is the entire product. 18. Melatonin is a hormone, not a sedative, and the supplement industry has spent years selling you doses that are anywhere from 10 to 60 times higher than what clinical research identifies as effective, which means the standard 10 mg gummy you take before bed is not a more powerful sleep tool, but a fundamentally different and potentially counterproductive one. Melatonin signals to your brain that darkness has arrived and shifts your circadian phase. It does not produce unconsciousness the way a pharmaceutical sleep agent does, and more of it does not produce more of that signaling effect. Clinical research consistently shows that doses above 0.5 milligrams produce no additional sleep onset benefit and may create next-day grogginess, daytime hormonal disruption, and potential desensitization of melatonin receptors over time. A 2023 study in the Journal of the American Medical Association Internal Medicine found significant labeling inaccuracies across commercially available melatonin supplements, with actual content varying from 83% below to 478% above the stated dose, meaning the pill you think contains 5 milligrams may contain anywhere from under 1 to over 24. Melatonin is available without prescription in the United States, but is regulated as a prescription drug in most of Europe, Canada, and Australia. A regulatory disagreement that reflects genuine scientific uncertainty about appropriate unsupervised use at the doses commonly sold here. Long-term safety data for nightly high-dose melatonin in adults is limited, and effects on the hypothalamic pituitary axis from extended supplementation are not fully characterized. Pediatric melatonin use has grown dramatically despite the absence of long-term safety data in children. Taking 10 milligrams to accomplish what 0.3 milligrams can do is like screaming that it is nighttime into a phone that is already on silent. The volume does not improve the message, it makes the experience worse for everyone involved, including your morning. 19. Apple cider vinegar capsules are a product that took a liquid with modest, contested preliminary evidence and removed the one feature that made the preliminary evidence worth discussing, then charged more for the result. The primary active compound in apple cider vinegar is acetic acid, and there is limited evidence from small studies that liquid apple cider vinegar consumed before carbohydrate. Heavy meals can modestly blunt post-meal glucose spikes. That mechanism operates in the stomach and upper gastrointestinal tract through direct contact. Encapsulating acetic acid and delivering it past the stomach in a timed-release format bypasses the anatomical site where the proposed mechanism was thought to occur, which means the capsule form potentially negates the one thing about the liquid that was at least theoretically interesting. A 2020 systematic review in BMJ Evidence-Based Medicine found that evidence for apple cider vinegar's health benefits was low quality and largely derived from small short-duration trials with significant methodological limitations. Multiple case reports document esophageal burns from undiluted liquid apple cider vinegar and tooth enamel erosion from regular use, which the capsule form does avoid, making it safer than the liquid version while also being less likely to do whatever the liquid version was doing. The belly fat claims use the phrase visceral fat to sound clinical. The actual data showing meaningful changes in visceral fat from apple cider vinegar in humans is extremely limited and involves dose quantities not achievable through supplementation. Apple cider vinegar supplement marketing relies heavily on social media testimonials and ancestral wisdom framing rather than clinical trial citations, because the clinical trial citations do not support the label. The only thing an apple cider vinegar capsule does more efficiently than liquid apple cider vinegar is cost more money. You remove the mechanism and kept the price increase. That is not an upgrade. 20. The probiotic supplement market is selling you a concept that the science has not yet figured out how to deliver, because the honest answer to which probiotic should I take is that researchers do not currently know which strains, at what doses, work for which individuals, with which specific conditions, in which gut environments, and whether the bacteria you swallow survive the journey to colonize anything at all. The human gut microbiome contains trillions of microorganisms across potentially thousands of species. Most commercial probiotic supplements contain 1 to 10 strains, an infinitesimally small subset of that ecosystem. Marketed as though introducing 10 familiar faces into a city of trillions will meaningfully reorganize the social structure. A landmark 2018 study published in Cell found that probiotic supplements did not reliably colonize the guts of healthy individuals. Most participants' microbiomes return to their baseline within weeks, essentially rejecting the supplement and resuming prior composition. The same 2018 Cell study found that probiotics administered after antibiotics actually delayed the natural recovery of the microbiome, compared to receiving no intervention at all, which is the opposite of the primary clinical narrative that has sold this category for 2 decades. Probiotic benefits are highly strain-specific and condition-specific. Evidence for a specific lactobacillus strain reducing antibiotic-associated diarrhea does not transfer to general immunity claims or mood improvement claims, even if all TAR3 appear on the same product label. The FDA classifies most probiotic supplements as dietary supplements rather than drugs, meaning efficacy does not need to be demonstrated before the product reaches the shelf. The global probiotic supplement market exceeds $60 billion annually. A generic probiotic arriving in your gut is like sending 3 strangers from another country to restore civic order in a city of trillions of residents with complex existing alliances. They will likely be escorted out before dinner without having changed anything. 21. Magnesium deficiency is real, clinically documented, and genuinely underdiagnosed in specific populations. which is the legitimate fact the supplement industry uses as the entry point before expanding the claim to cover every conceivable symptom experienced by every person who has ever felt tired, stressed, cramped, or unable to sleep well, which is most of the adult population on any given Tuesday. Magnesium is involved in over 300 enzymatic reactions in the human body, and that breadth of involvement is exactly what makes it so easy to connect magnesium status to almost any symptom and make the connection sound scientifically credible. True clinical magnesium deficiency is most common in people with type 2 diabetes, alcoholism, gastrointestinal malabsorption conditions, and chronic diuretic use. Standard serum magnesium testing is a poor indicator of total body magnesium status, a limitation that legitimate researchers acknowledge and that marketers use to suggest everyone is deficient and conventional testing cannot prove otherwise. Different magnesium compounds have dramatically different bioavailability and physiological targets. Magnesium glycinate is better absorbed. Magnesium oxide is poorly absorbed. Magnesium citrate works primarily as a laxative. Selling magnesium without specifying form is like selling medicine without specifying what it does. The evidence for magnesium in migraine prophylaxis is the strongest of any supplement application in this category, but it is still rated as moderate quality evidence and is primarily relevant for individuals with confirmed low magnesium levels. The online magnesium deficiency narrative grew substantially between 2018 and 2023, driven by wellness content creators, making magnesium one of the fastest growing supplement categories without any new clinical evidence arriving to justify the growth. Magnesium is a legitimate mineral. Selling it as a simultaneous cure for anxiety, sleep disruption, muscle cramps, and migraines to people who have not been tested for deficiency is handing everyone in a hospital a cast. Some people needed it, most acquired a plaster inconvenience. 22. St. John's wort is the supplement that actually does something pharmacologically meaningful, which is precisely why it is the most genuinely dangerous entry in the herbal supplement category for anyone on other medications, because a compound with real activity in the body also has real interactions with everything else your body is processing at the same time. Meta-analyses, including a 2008 Cochrane review of 29 trials, found St. John's wort superior to placebo for mild to moderate depression, and the evidence in that specific narrow application is among the better supported findings in the herbal supplement literature. That is the part the marketing tells you. St. John's wort is a potent inducer of cytochrome P450 enzymes, particularly the pathway designated CYP3A4 and P-glycoprotein, which significantly reduces blood levels of numerous medications that rely on those same metabolic pathways. Documented interactions include reduced efficacy of oral contraceptives, leading to unintended pregnancies recorded in case literature, antiretroviral drugs for HIV, cyclosporine, which is used to prevent organ rejection in transplant recipients, and certain chemotherapy agents. Transplant patients have experienced acute organ rejection after self-medicating with St. John's wort, documented in case reports in The Lancet and the Annals of Internal Medicine. Serotonin syndrome, a potentially life-threatening condition involving excessive serotonergic activity, has been reported when St. John's wort is combined with selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors or other serotonergic medications. In Germany, St. John's wort is available only by prescription and is regulated as a pharmaceutical antidepressant. In the United States, it is sold freely as a dietary supplement in any pharmacy aisle. St. John's wort is the herbal supplement that actually works, which means it can actually cause harm if it decides your cyclosporin is an inconvenience. Calling it natural is doing very heavy lifting when the plant can interfere with a transplanted kidney. 23. Elderberry had some genuinely promising early research, a plausible immune mechanism, and a compelling historical narrative. And then between 2018 and 2021, its market grew approximately 500%. Not because new clinical evidence arrived, but because pandemic-related immune anxiety arrived first, and the evidence base was not large enough or robust enough to resist that level of commercial pressure. A 2016 randomized pilot study of 312 air travelers found elderberry supplementation reduced cold duration by approximately 2 days, a finding frequently cited in marketing. The word pilot means it was not designed as a definitive trial and was not powered to establish a conclusive result. A 2004 randomized trial found elderberry extract reduced influenza A and B duration, but the study was conducted by a researcher with financial ties to the manufacturer, introducing the conflict of interest that makes independent replication necessary. A 2020 meta-analysis in complementary therapies in medicine found elderberry reduced upper respiratory symptom duration, but rated the overall evidence quality as moderate to low. A theoretical concern emerged during the 2020 pandemic that elderberry's immune-stimulating properties could potentially exacerbate cytokine storm responses in severe respiratory illness, a concern that was raised in the literature, but not definitively established in either direction. Raw elderberries contain sambunigrin, a cyanogenic glycoside that causes nausea and vomiting in unprocessed form, which contributes to an aura of medicinal potency that the processed extract in commercial supplements has not earned through the same mechanism. The evidence on elderberry says, interesting and worth further study. The label says to take this instead of getting vaccinated. Those are not the same recommendation, and the gap between them grew by 500% in 3 years without the science moving an inch. 24, Linus Pauling won 2 Nobel Prizes, one in chemistry and one for peace, and then spent the final decades of his career advocating for megadose vitamin C therapy based on deeply flawed self-experimentation and observational reasoning that rigorous clinical trials subsequently failed to validate, which is a biographical fact worth holding in mind every time someone invokes scientific credentials as a reason to skip the clinical evidence. Pauling's 1970 book recommended 1 to 2 grams of vitamin C daily for cold prevention. He later escalated his personal recommendations to 12 to 18 grams per day for cancer prevention, based primarily on his own intuition and extrapolation from limited observational data. A 2013 Cochrane review of 29 trials found that vitamin C supplementation did not reduce cold incidence in the general population, though it modestly reduced cold duration by approximately half a day on average in regular users. The body's intestinal absorption of vitamin C saturates at approximately 200 milligrams per dose. Anything above that amount is excreted in urine, which is not a metaphor but a documented pharmacokinetic reality. High-dose oral vitamin C increases urinary oxalate, raising kidney stone risk in individuals predisposed to calcium oxalate stone formation. Intravenous high-dose vitamin C is being studied in oncology as an adjunct treatment at concentrations that are physiologically impossible to achieve through oral supplementation. The marketing for oral vitamin C supplements frequently references intravenous cancer research without acknowledging that the delivery route determines whether the mechanism is achievable. Pauling died of prostate cancer in 1994 after decades of self-administered megadosing. That biographical detail does not appear in the megadose vitamin C marketing literature with any consistency. A 2-time Nobel laureate's intuition about vitamin C did not survive clinical testing. Your supplementation strategy based on his book has the same problem. 25. The association between eating fish regularly and lower rates of cardiovascular disease is one of the more consistent findings in nutritional epidemiology, and the supplement industry took that association, removed everything surrounding it, including the protein, the dietary pattern, the omega-3 to omega-6 balance of the whole diet, and the lifestyle factors correlating with regular fish consumption, compressed the remainder into a soft gel and sold it as equivalent cardiovascular protection. Multiple large, well-powered randomized controlled trials have specifically tested whether that compression works. The Ascent trial, published in 2018, enrolled 15,480 participants and found omega-3 supplementation had no significant effect on cardiovascular events in people with diabetes. The Origin trial, published in 2012, enrolled 12,536 participants and found no significant cardiovascular benefit from omega-3 supplementation in people with dysglycemia. The Vital trial, published in 2018, similarly found that omega-3 supplementation did not significantly reduce major cardiovascular events as a primary endpoint. High-dose prescription omega-3, specifically icosapentaenoic acid ethyl ester available under a brand name, has shown benefit at 4 grams per day in specific high triglyceride populations. That is a pharmaceutical-grade prescription medication used in a specific clinical context, not the standard 1-gram fish oil capsule sold in the supplement aisle to the general population, and conflating the two is a sleight of hand the marketing performs regularly. The fish oil supplement market generates approximately $3 billion annually in the United States. Eating salmon several times a week is associated with meaningful cardiovascular benefit. Taking a capsule of compressed fish oil is not eating salmon. The full ecosystem of nutrients, eating patterns, and lifestyle correlates that comes with regular whole fish consumption does not fit inside a softgel. You bought the fish and discarded the meal. 26, the largest randomized controlled trial of ginkgo biloba for dementia prevention ever conducted, found that it had no effect on preventing dementia or cognitive decline. And the supplement continues to be one of the top-selling herbal products in the United States, which tells you something important about the relationship between clinical evidence and supplement sales that has nothing to do with ginkgo specifically. The Ginkgo Evaluation of Memory study, known as the GEM trial, enrolled 3,069 older adults and followed them over a median of 6.1 years in a double-blind, placebo-controlled design. The primary result was no difference in dementia incidence between the ginkgo and placebo groups. A 2012 Cochrane review on ginkgo and dementia found that while some smaller trials showed modest cognitive benefits, evidence was inconsistent and effect sizes were small, which is the pattern you see when an effect is not real, and individual trials are underpowered to definitively rule it out. Ginkgo biloba has documented anticoagulant properties. It inhibits platelet activating factor, creating a bleeding risk that is clinically relevant when combined with aspirin, warfarin, or other anticoagulant medications. Case reports document spontaneous intracranial bleeding associated with ginkgo supplementation in individuals with no other identified risk factors. The original pharmacological interest in ginkgo was driven substantially by European research primarily from the 1990s, and several of those foundational positive studies had small sample sizes and methodological limitations that larger subsequent trials did not confirm. Ginkgo biloba generates hundreds of millions in annual revenue on the strength of a claim that its most rigorous, largest, and best-funded test has failed to support. The supplement promises to preserve your memory while the research consistently fails to remember why it was supposed to work. That irony belongs on the label. It is not there. 27. Zinc has legitimate clinical applications in immune function and specific contexts where it genuinely matters, and the supplement industry has taken that legitimate foundation and built an entire category of high-dose products on top of it without adequately communicating that the difference between a helpful amount of zinc and a dose that depletes your copper and damages your nervous system is measured in milligrams that most product labels significantly exceed. Zinc acetate or gluconate lozenges used within 24 hours of cold symptom onset have reasonable evidence for modest reduction in cold duration. The specific form, the timing relative to symptom onset, and the dose all matter significantly in that evidence base. Zinc supplementation at doses exceeding 40 milligrams per day, which is the established tolerable upper limit, causes copper depletion over time because zinc and copper share the same intestinal transporter and compete for absorption. Copper deficiency caused by zinc oversupplementation can lead to anemia, neurological symptoms, and potentially irreversible nerve damage, documented across multiple case reports in the medical literature. Intranasal zinc products were voluntarily withdrawn from the market by the manufacturer in 2009 after the FDA received over 130 reports of anosmia, which is permanent loss of the sense of smell associated with their use. Many daily immune supplement stacks marketed as providing optimal immune support contain 25 to 50 milligrams of zinc per serving, which exceeds established tolerable upper limits when compounded with the zinc already present in a normal diet. The marketing concept of boosting immunity with zinc relies on correcting a deficiency state. Supplementing above normal levels does not linearly increase immune competence. Zinc is the supplement where the gap between helpful and harmful is measured in milligrams. The marketing says more immune power. The toxicology literature says you are now depleting copper. These are not a compatible pair of outcomes. 28. Chromium picolinate had a plausible mechanism on paper, a commercially convenient connection to blood sugar and weight management, and a substantial body of research that, when examined carefully, produced inconsistent results with no clinically meaningful effect in well-powered trials, and yet remained a staple of the weight loss supplement category for decades because the mechanism sounded credible and the evidence against it accumulated slowly and quietly. Chromium is an essential trace mineral involved in insulin signaling. Chromium deficiency can impair glucose metabolism, which makes the mechanism sound biologically grounded. Actual chromium deficiency is rare in people consuming adequate calories from varied food sources, meaning the premise that most supplement buyers need additional chromium has not been established. A 2006 comprehensive review in diabetes technology and therapeutics analyzed 15 randomized trials and found inconsistent results with no reliable evidence of clinically meaningful blood glucose reduction. A rigorous 2006 trial published in Diabetes Care found chromium picolinate produced no significant improvements in insulin sensitivity or glucose control in obese adults without diabetes. The picolinate form of chromium attracted scientific concern in the 1990s after animal studies suggested potential genotoxicity. Subsequent human research has not confirmed that concern at dietary doses, but the unresolved question slowed FDA approval of specific health claims for the ingredient. The Federal Trade Commission took enforcement action against chromium picolinate marketers in the 1990s for unsubstantiated claims, resulting in consent agreements limiting the permissible scope of those claims. Chromium picolinate remains widely sold today with refined but still expansive health messaging, generating hundreds of millions in revenue despite the accumulated evidence of minimal meaningful effect in the target population. The mechanism exists in a textbook. The clinical outcome does not exist in a well-powered trial. Those two things live in different zip codes, and the label does not show you the map. 29. Saw palmetto has been tested more rigorously, more repeatedly, and with larger sample sizes than most herbal supplements, and it has failed more consistently than most herbal supplements, and it remains among the top-selling herbal products in the United States, which is the kind of evidence-market relationship that tells you something fundamental about why the supplement industry does not fear clinical trials the way pharmaceutical companies do. The STEP trial published in 2006 in the New England Journal of Medicine enrolled 225 men in a double-blind, placebo-controlled design and found saw palmetto extract no more effective than placebo for benign prostatic hyperplasia symptoms over 1 year. The CAMUS trial published in 2011 enrolled 369 men and found no significant symptom improvement even when escalating the saw palmetto dose progressively to 3 times the standard commercial amount, meaning more of it also did not work. The proposed mechanism was inhibition of the 5-alpha reductase enzyme, the same enzyme targeted by the prescription pharmaceutical finasteride, and laboratory studies did show some in vitro activity suggesting this pathway was engaged. That activity did not translate into clinical outcomes in men's actual urinary symptoms in controlled trial conditions. The supplement's persistence in the market is partly explained by a genuinely high placebo response rate for urinary symptoms associated with an enlarged prostate. Men often report feeling better regardless of active intervention, which makes it difficult for an individual to distinguish between a real effect and the natural variation in symptom severity over time. Saw palmetto is often marketed alongside vague, prostate support language that implies medical relevance without triggering specific regulatory scrutiny. 2 major trials, both negative. Sales continuing without disruption. The evidence has been in for over 15 years. The shelf space is not noticed. 30. Milk thistle has a plausible mechanism, decades of research interest, and genuine scientific credibility as a starting point, and the liver support supplement category has taken that credible starting point and layered claims on top of it that the ingredient itself has repeatedly declined to validate in rigorous human trials. The active compound in milk thistle is silymarin, which has demonstrated hepatoprotective properties in cell models and animal studies, providing a legitimate mechanistic basis for investigating it in human liver disease. A large National Institutes of Health-funded trial called the SENCH trial, published in 2012, tested silymarin in chronic hepatitis C and found it did not significantly reduce viral load or liver enzyme levels compared to placebo over the trial period. A 2005 Cochrane review of 13 trials examining milk thistle in alcoholic liver disease found no significant reduction in liver-related mortality. No supplement can regenerate liver cells in a clinically meaningful time frame. The liver's regenerative capacity is intrinsic and depends fundamentally on removing the source of ongoing damage, whether that is alcohol, hepatotoxic medications, or another insult, rather than adding botanical compounds to the equation. Many commercial liver support formulas bundle milk thistle alongside dozens of additional herbs in a multi-ingredient combination that makes it impossible to attribute any observed outcome to any specific compound, or to identify the source of any adverse effect. These products are marketed heavily to people who drink regularly, creating the psychologically convenient but medically unsupported belief that supplementation provides meaningful protection against the hepatic consequences of habitual alcohol intake. A liver support supplement is not a seatbelt for your drinking. It is a bumper sticker on a vehicle you are actively driving into a barrier. The liver can regenerate when the damage stops. A capsule does not change what the damage is doing. 31. Valerian root is a supplement that smells strongly of old athletic equipment, may or may not help you sleep depending on which study you consult, which specific extract preparation was used, which outcome measure was applied, and whether your brain has decided tonight is the night the placebo is working, which makes it a genuinely expensive gamble with variable odds and a consistently unpleasant aroma. A 2006 systematic review of 16 randomized trials published in the American Journal of Medicine found that while valerian may improve sleep quality, the evidence was insufficient to confirm it as a reliable or consistent treatment for sleep disturbance. The proposed mechanisms span GABA receptor activity, adenosine binding, and serotonin receptor interaction, but the specific compounds responsible for any sedative effect have not been definitively identified despite decades of investigation. Valerian root extract is chemically unstable. The composition changes significantly with storage conditions, plant age, and extraction method, meaning the product you bought last month and the product you buy next month may have meaningfully different chemical profiles even from the same brand. Self-reported improvement in sleep quality with valerian has not been consistently confirmed by objective polysomnography measurements, which are formal sleep studies that measure actual sleep architecture rather than how rested someone reports feeling in the morning. The gap between subjective improvement and objective sleep measurement is a reliable indicator of placebo response. Some valerian preparations have demonstrated next-day drowsiness and shown potential for interactions with central nervous system depressant medications. The marketing describes it as non-habit forming, by contrast with pharmaceutical sleep aids, which is accurate but does not establish that it works. Valerian is the sleep supplement that smells like a locker room and operates on the principle that something might happen tonight. At $18 a bottle, the odds should be better than that, and the smell definitely should be. 32. CLA supplements are built on a foundation of mouse studies that showed dramatic fat reduction at doses with no human equivalent, human trials that found statistically significant but clinically trivial effects, and a metabolic side effect profile that the before and after photography on the label does not show you. The mouse studies showing dramatic fat reduction with conjugated linoleic acid were foundational to the human supplement claims, but the doses used in those studies would require a human to consume many grams of CLA daily, far beyond what any commercial supplement delivers. Human trials of CLA have shown statistically significant but clinically marginal fat reduction. A systematic review in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition published in 2007 found that CLA produced modest reductions in body fat alongside significant increases in markers of systemic inflammation and oxidative stress. CLA supplementation has been shown to worsen insulin resistance and raise blood glucose in some study populations, which is a particularly relevant concern for individuals at elevated risk for type 2 diabetes, who are often the same people shopping for body composition supplements. CLA occurs naturally in dairy products and grass-fed beef in small quantities, with no documented health concerns at those food-level concentrations. The commercially synthesized form used in supplements has a different isomeric profile than food-derived CLA. A distinction the marketing consistently obscures by presenting the supplement as simply a concentrated version of something already found in healthy food. The supplement industry uses the existence of naturally occurring CLA to imply safety and equivalence when the two forms are chemically different in ways that matter to human metabolism. The rodents in those foundational studies lost significant fat. The humans in the clinical trials lost a clinically trivial amount. The CLA capsule produced inflammation along the way. The label showed neither the mouse nor the inflammatory marker. It showed a photograph. 33. L-carnitine's role as a mitochondrial fat transporter is biochemically accurate, and the supplement industry's conclusion that supplementing it will therefore accelerate fat transport in people who are already producing sufficient carnitine is the specific logical step that the evidence does not support. Healthy individuals synthesize adequate L-carnitine endogenously, and supplementing a molecule your body already produces in sufficient quantities does not increase the operational capacity of the system it serves. A 2000 review in the Journal of Physiology found no evidence that carnitine supplementation improves exercise performance or increases fat oxidation in well-nourished individuals, addressing the core athletic and body composition claims at the level of actual physical output. True L-carnitine deficiency is a genetic disorder affecting carnitine synthesis or transport that requires medical management. It is not a condition diagnosed by noticing that weight loss has become difficult. A 2013 study published in Nature Medicine highlighted that gut microbiome. Metabolism of L-carnitine produces trimethylamine N-oxide, abbreviated as TMAO, a compound associated with increased cardiovascular disease risk in observational studies, introducing a mechanistic concern about routine supplementation specifically in non-deficient individuals that the marketing has no interest in discussing. The TMAO-carnitine association remains mechanistically debated and has not been established as definitively causal, but it introduced legitimate scientific caution into the conversation about who should be supplementing this compound and why. L-carnitine supplements are marketed almost exclusively by explaining what the molecule does in cellular biology, without reference to the evidence showing that function is already operating at sufficient capacity in healthy adults who are the target consumer. Supplementing L-carnitine because your mitochondria need more fat transporters is like building additional checkout lanes in a store that never has a line. The infrastructure was not the constraint. Now, there is also a concern that the construction disturbed the plumbing. 34-DHEA is described in supplement marketing as the mother hormone, a precursor that the body converts into testosterone and estrogen. And the implication is that supplementing it will restore the youthful hormonal balance associated with higher natural levels. And the problem with that implication is that a capsule has no ability to direct where the conversion goes, in what tissues, at what ratios, or whether your body interprets the supplemental DHEA as something it needed. DHEA is produced by the adrenal glands, and its decline with age, beginning around the mid-20s, is well documented. Whether supplemental DHEA converts to testosterone, estrogen, or remains primarily as DHEA sulfate in circulation depends on tissue-specific enzyme expression that varies by individual and cannot be targeted by an oral supplement. A rigorous 2006 New England Journal of Medicine randomized trial of 2 years of DHEA supplementation in older adults found no significant improvement in body composition, physical performance, insulin sensitivity, or quality of life compared to placebo across a well-powered design in the population most likely to benefit if the mechanism held. DHEA is a controlled substance in many countries, including Canada, Australia, and the United Kingdom. It is available over the counter in the United States as a direct consequence of the 1994 Dietary Supplement Health and Education Act, which created a regulatory category that does not require pre-market efficacy demonstration. Women supplementing DHEA have reported acne, hair loss, voice deepening, and menstrual irregularities from unpredictable androgenic conversion. Men have reported breast tissue development from estrogenic conversion. DHEA is prohibited in professional sport by the World Anti-Doping Agency because it can produce positive tests for anabolic steroids. Supplementing DHEA as an anti-aging strategy is like sending money to an organization with no oversight and trusting them to allocate it exactly where you intended. Your adrenal glands have strong opinions about where that money goes. Those opinions are not on the label. 35. Glucosamine and chondroitin have been tested in larger, more rigorous, better-funded trials than most supplements in this category, and the results have been negative in exactly the ways that should have disrupted the market and did not, because the supplement industry has no mechanism by which failed clinical evidence removes a product from a shelf. The glucosamine and chondroitin arthritis intervention trial, known as the GATE study, was funded by the National Institutes of Health. Enrolled 1,583 patients in a double-blind placebo-controlled design and included celecoxib as an active pharmaceutical control. The primary result was that glucosamine alone, chondroitin alone, and the combination all failed to achieve statistically significant pain reduction compared to placebo in the overall study population. A subgroup of participants with moderate to severe pain did show a statistically significant response to the combination, a finding that supplement marketing has mined extensively. That finding was a post hoc subgroup analysis, which is a lower standard of evidence than a primary trial outcome, and it has not been independently replicated in a trial designed specifically to test it. The proposed mechanism that orally ingested glucosamine reaches joint cartilage and stimulates proteoglycan synthesis has not been convincingly demonstrated in human tissue at the doses available in commercial supplements. Cartilage is avascular, receiving nutrients through diffusion via synovial fluid, and the pharmacokinetics of getting supplemental glucosamine from your intestine to your articular cartilage in biologically relevant concentrations is not established. Both the American Academy of Orthopedic Surgeons and the Osteoarthritis Research Society International do not recommend glucosamine or chondroitin for knee osteoarthritis based on current evidence. Your joints hurt. That pain is real. The cartilage rebuilding capsule is the part that has not shown up in the data after 2 decades of looking, and the shelf still does not know. 36, curcumin, has one of the most impressive collections of positive laboratory findings of any compound in the supplement category, and one of the most consistent records of failing to deliver those findings inside an actual human body, because the same properties that make it interesting in a petri dish make it nearly impossible to get to the tissues where it would need to act. Curcumin constitutes approximately 2 to 5% of turmeric by weight, and standard supplement doses are typically 500 to 1,000 milligrams of curcumin extract. Its oral bioavailability in standard form is so poor that blood levels after ingestion are barely detectable. Curcumin is rapidly metabolized and conjugated in the intestinal wall and liver, meaning peak plasma concentrations after standard oral doses sit in the nanomolar range, far below the concentrations used in the cell culture experiments that generated the positive findings the marketing is built on. The industry's response to this bioavailability problem has been proprietary delivery systems, including phospholipid complexes, nanoparticles, and piperine combinations. Piperine, derived from black pepper, does increase absorption, but it also inhibits cytochrome P450 enzymes and raises its own questions about interactions with medications. A 2017 perspective published in the Journal of Medicinal Chemistry by a team of researchers argued that curcumin is a pan-assay interference compound, meaning it interferes with laboratory assays in ways that produce false positive results, which would explain the accumulation of positive in vitro studies without any clinical translation. Of over 120 clinical trials of curcumin registered by 2017, no double-blind trial had produced convincing evidence of efficacy in any specific indication. Curcumin is spectacular in a test tube and functionally absent from your inflamed tissue. You are purchasing the laboratory results without the part where any of it occurs inside your body. The petri dish is not you. 37, adrenal fatigue is not a diagnosis. It is not in any medical textbook. It is not recognized by any endocrinology organization in any country. It is a wellness industry creation that monetizes vague and common symptoms by assigning them to an organ that cannot be held responsible because the diagnostic test for the claimed condition does not exist, which is a commercially elegant arrangement. The Endocrine Society, the primary international body of endocrinology specialists, formally states that adrenal fatigue is not a real medical condition and that its proposed mechanisms are not supported by scientific evidence. Real adrenal insufficiency is called Addison's disease. It is serious, diagnosable through specific blood testing, and treated with pharmaceutical corticosteroids under medical supervision. It is not treated with herbal supplements, and it is not the same thing the wellness industry is describing when it uses the phrase adrenal fatigue. The adrenal fatigue concept was popularized primarily through James Wilson's book published in 1998, which attributed symptoms including fatigue, brain fog, and difficulty waking to subclinical adrenal insufficiency that conventional medical testing cannot detect, which is a framework that is impossible to falsify and therefore impossible to disprove through the normal mechanisms of science. Fatigue, brain fog, and low energy are real experiences with numerous legitimate medical explanations, including thyroid dysfunction, sleep apnea, depression, and anemia, all of which proper medical evaluation can identify and potentially treat. Adrenal support supplements typically contain adaptogenic herbs, alongside B vitamins and vitamin C, ingredients that may have modest benefits for stress and energy through real mechanisms that have nothing to do with repairing exhausted adrenal glands. The supplement category generates hundreds of millions annually by billing you for a disease that endocrinologists cannot locate on any scan or in any blood panel. You may be tired. The specific organ being blamed has not agreed to the diagnosis. 38. Ashwagandha has a legitimate but narrow evidence base and a marketing footprint that is approximately 8 times larger than what that evidence base can actually support, and the gap between those two things is where several $100 million in annual revenue lives. The best supported application for ashwagandha, specifically the KSM66 extract used in most of the better designed trials, is reduction in perceived stress and anxiety, with several placebo-controlled trials showing statistically significant reductions in self-reported stress scores and salivary cortisol levels. That is a real finding in a specific narrow application. The testosterone and muscle building claims are based primarily on small trials of 40 to 60 men conducted over 8 to 12 weeks with statistically significant but modest effect sizes that have not been independently replicated in large-scale trials. Case reports of ashwagandha-induced liver injury have been published in peer-reviewed literature, and the FDA and NIH liver toxicity database list it as a suspected hepatotoxin. The frequency of this outcome is unclear but not negligible, and the ancient herb completely safe framing does not adequately communicate the risk. Ashwagandha interacts with thyroid function and thyroid medications. Some evidence suggests it increases thyroid hormone levels, which could be relevant in people with hyperthyroidism or those on thyroid medication, a detail that products targeting stressed, fatigued consumers do not typically feature prominently. The same product is sold simultaneously as a stress supplement, a testosterone booster, a nootropic, a sleep aid, and an athletic performance enhancer, with different products making different primary claims using the identical ingredient. The global ashwagandha market exceeded $800 million in 2023, growing rapidly on social media amplification of the adaptogen concept. When one ingredient is simultaneously the answer to stress, testosterone, memory, sleep, and performance, the simpler explanation is that someone very skilled at marketing wrote the label. 39. No commercially available nootropic supplement blend has demonstrated reliable cognitive enhancement in healthy adults in a rigorous, well-powered, independently replicated clinical trial. And the category is sold almost entirely on the strength of a word coined in 1972, a collection of low-quality ingredient studies, and the specific human anxiety of feeling like your brain is not operating at full capacity. The term nootropic was introduced by Romanian chemist Corneliu Georgia in reference to specific racem compounds with defined mechanisms. The marketing category has since expanded to include essentially any ingredient that anyone has ever associated with brain function in any study at any dose in any population. Most positive nootropic ingredient studies are conducted in cognitively impaired populations or individuals with documented nutritional deficiencies, and the results are then presented in marketing directed at healthy adults seeking performance enhancement, which is a population for whom the mechanism has not been tested and the benefit has not been established. A 2018 review in Psychological Science in the Public Interest, evaluating the evidence for popular cognitive supplements, found consistently low-quality evidence and significant commercial conflict of interest in the positive studies underpinning the category. Multi-ingredient proprietary blend nootropic stacks make it impossible to attribute any observed effect to any specific compound, and they make regulatory oversight nearly impossible because no individual ingredient is present in a quantity that triggers scrutiny. Phosphatidylserine is the only common nootropic ingredient for which the FDA has allowed a qualified health claim for cognitive function, and that claim requires acknowledging the evidence is limited and inconsistent, which is not the framing typically used on the front of the package. The healthy cognitive enhancement supplement market was valued at over $5 billion globally in 2023. You are not buying cognitive enhancement. You are buying the aspiration of cognitive enhancement and a capsule to make it feel like a plan. 40. The fasting mimicker supplement category is performing a specific and commercially sophisticated maneuver, which is borrowing the clinical credibility of a well-evidenced practice, namely caloric restriction and intermittent fasting, and implying that a capsule can deliver equivalent cellular benefits without requiring you to actually not eat, which is not how fasting works at a mechanistic level. Autophagy, the cellular cleanup process that fasting research has generated significant interest around, is upregulated primarily by mTOR inhibition and AMPK activation driven by actual nutrient deprivation signals. It requires the absence of nutrients, not the addition of a supplement. Compounds including spermidine, quercetin, and berberine are marketed as autophagy activators based largely on animal models. Human clinical data demonstrating meaningful autophagy induction at supplement doses is essentially absent from the literature. Berberine has the most robust evidence of any compound in this category, showing genuine glucose-lowering and lipid-lowering effects in multiple trials that share some mechanistic overlap with the pharmaceutical metformin. That is a real and meaningful finding about berberine's metabolic effects, and it is a fundamentally different claim from inducing fasting-equivalent autophagy, but the marketing frequently presents them as continuous rather than separate. No human trial has measured autophagy markers in peripheral tissue, and demonstrated that any supplement achieves levels equivalent to actual caloric restriction. Fasting mimicker is not a regulatory category, has no standardized definition, and permits essentially unlimited claim expansion as long as an ingredient study exists somewhere in the literature that a marketing team could reference. The supplements retailing for $29 in your local health food store could not accomplish what pharmaceutical caloric restriction research has spent decades trying to replicate through drug development. A fasting mimicker is a postcard from a vacation you did not take. The benefits of fasting come from not eating. There is no capsule that replicates the absence of a meal. 41 oral peptide supplements are asking your digestive system to do something it was specifically designed not to do, which is allow intact protein chains to pass through the intestinal wall and arrive at distant tissues with their biological activity preserved. And your digestive system is very good at its actual job, which is breaking those chains apart before they get anywhere near their claimed destination. Peptides are chains of amino acids, and when consumed orally, the digestive system breaks them into their constituent amino acids, eliminating the specific biological activity that the intact peptide sequence would have had. BPC 157 is a synthetic peptide studied in animal models for wound healing and gastrointestinal repair. It has not been evaluated in human clinical trials and is not approved for human use by any regulatory agency anywhere. The mechanism of action in animal studies involves injected or locally applied peptide. Oral administration routes are far less studied and face the fundamental digestion barrier that makes the claimed systemic effects implausible at a basic pharmacokinetic level. Research chemicals including BPC 157 are sold in gray market supplement and research chemical stores with explicit labels stating they are not for human consumption, functioning as a legal disclaimer while the product is purchased and consumed by humans for human use. Collagen peptides specifically have some evidence for skin elasticity and joint-adjacent outcomes, but the mechanism debate centers on whether intact peptides or simply the amino acid content are driving any observed effect. The FDA has sent formal warning letters to companies marketing peptide products as supplements, classifying them as unapproved drugs. Swallowing a biologically active peptide supplement and expecting it to arrive at its target intact is like mailing a sandcastle. By the time your digestive system processes it, you have sand. The structure that was supposed to do the work was dissolved during transit. It was never going to arrive as the castle. 42. Mushroom coffee is regular coffee with a quantity of functional mushroom extract that is typically so far below the doses used in studies showing any effect that describing it as a functional mushroom product requires defining function very generously and studying the label very selectively. Lion's mane has the strongest evidence base of any functional mushroom, with small trials showing modest effects on cognitive scores in elderly adults with mild cognitive impairment. That specific population in that specific application is the evidence that marketing is referencing when it implies focus and cognitive enhancement for a healthy 35-year-old paying $6 per serving. Standard mushroom coffee products typically contain 250 to 500 milligrams of mushroom extract per serving. Most positive trials on lion's mane used 1,000 to 3,000 milligrams daily over 12 to 16 weeks. Cordyceps extracts marketed for athletic performance and energy are based primarily on animal studies and a small number of human trials. The most prominent cordyceps performance study involved Chinese Olympic athletes in the 1990s under conditions that have never been independently replicated by an external research team. Chaga mushroom is marketed as an antioxidant and immune booster and contains high levels of oxalates. Case reports of oxalate nephropathy, which is kidney damage from oxalate accumulation, have been published in association with excessive chaga consumption, making the natural immune support framing somewhat incomplete. The claim that mushroom coffee reduces caffeine anxiety is rarely accurate because most commercial products retain substantial caffeine from the coffee base, meaning the adaptogens are presented as a modifier while the stimulant is still doing its original work. The functional mushroom supplement market exceeded $8 billion globally in 2023. You are paying 3 times the price for regular coffee with decorative doses of mushroom extract and an illustration of a forest on the packaging. The forest is doing more work than the mushrooms. 43. NMN and NR supplements are selling you the metabolic profile of a younger mouse and calling it longevity science. And the distinction between what the mouse studies showed and what human clinical trials have established is the entire gap between a compelling research direction and a product you should be spending $50 to $100 per month on right now. NAD+ does decline with age and is genuinely important for mitochondrial function and DNA repair pathways. The underlying biology is legitimate and the research interest is well-founded. Mouse studies showing extended lifespan and improved metabolic function with NMN supplementation have been widely publicized. Mice and humans have substantially different NAD+ metabolism, meaning translating mouse lifespan results to human longevity predictions is speculative in ways that the press coverage of those studies does not always communicate. Human pharmacokinetic studies confirm that oral NMN and NR do raise blood NAD+ levels. Whether those elevated blood levels produce meaningful physiological changes in healthy adults has not been demonstrated in well-powered clinical outcome trials. David Sinclair, the most prominent public advocate for NAD+ supplementation, has financial interests in NMN companies, personally takes the supplements he researches, and has publicly recommended them to general audiences before the clinical evidence in humans exists to support population-level recommendations. A 2023 study raised concerns that elevated NAD+ might accelerate certain cancer progression pathways in preclinical models. This has not been established in humans and remains a hypothesis requiring investigation, but it introduced legitimate scientific caution into a category that had been marketed with almost no acknowledged uncertainty. NMN and NR supplements command premium prices in a market worth hundreds of millions annually, driven by longevity anxiety and the aspirational framing of aging research. The human longevity data has not arrived. You are purchasing a hypothesis at a significant monthly subscription rate and calling it a health strategy. 44. Activated charcoal toothpaste is physically removing surface material from your teeth, and the supplement industry is calling that whitening, and your dentist is going to have opinions about the distinction between those two descriptions. Activated charcoal is abrasive, enamel is irreplaceable. The American Dental Association issued a formal review in 2017, finding insufficient clinical evidence to support the safety or efficacy claims of charcoal-based dental products. Enamel does not regenerate. Once the surface layer is thinned through abrasive contact, the structural loss is permanent, meaning whatever initial whitening effect is produced by surface removal is achieved at the cost of the protective layer your teeth rely on for long-term integrity. A 2019 systematic review published in the British Dental Journal concluded that charcoal toothpaste claim benefits are unsubstantiated and that potential risks including enamel abrasion are not adequately communicated to consumers. Many charcoal toothpaste formulations are fluoride-free, removing the one ingredient in toothpaste with a well-established, replicated evidence base for cavity prevention, in exchange for a dramatic black color that creates a visual impression of powerful cleaning action during the brushing process. That visual impression is not accompanied by superior bacterial plaque removal compared to standard toothpaste in controlled studies. The black color creates a high-contrast visual experience when rinsed that reinforces a subjective sense of cleanliness, similar to how a strong flavor in a mouthwash creates a perception of efficacy. The ADA has not granted its seal of acceptance to any charcoal dental product. The natural positioning of charcoal implies a safety advantage over conventional whitening agents despite activated charcoal's abrasive mechanism presenting its own distinct category of dental risk. Activated charcoal toothpaste whitens teeth the way sandpaper whitens wood. Something is being removed. Permanently, that is not an improvement. Your enamel is not a renewable resource, and the packaging did not mention that. 45. Fiber supplements are a product with a legitimate clinical application for cholesterol reduction and modest glycemic modulation that a significant portion of the market is using as a meal management or weight loss strategy, built on the idea that if something fills you up, it is equivalent to a meal, which is a nutritional argument that fails the moment you examine what a meal actually provides. Psyllium husk fiber has documented evidence for LDL cholesterol reduction of approximately 5 to 10% and modest blood glucose moderation after carbohydrate-heavy meals. Those are real, meaningful, clinically relevant effects in the appropriate context. A fiber supplement drink containing 5 to 10 grams of fiber and minimal calories does not constitute nutrition. The satiety produced by bulk-forming fiber is temporary and arrives without the hormonal satiety signals generated by protein and dietary fat intake, meaning the hunger suppression is partial, transient, and not accompanied by the macronutrient delivery that a meal provides. Some commercial fiber supplement programs explicitly position their products as meal replacements or meal management tools. The mechanism by which they produce any weight loss effect is caloric restriction. The fiber is not metabolically special. The calorie deficit is the active ingredient, and the supplement is being marketed as though the psyllium is doing work that the absence of a meal is actually doing. Rapid increases in supplemental fiber without adequate water intake cause gastrointestinal distress, bloating, and constipation, which is the opposite of the digestive wellness claim on the front of the product. Whole food sources of fiber deliver the fiber alongside vitamins, minerals, phytonutrients, and macronutrients. A fiber supplement delivers fiber with nothing else accompanying it. Eating less is the mechanism. The husk is the packaging around that mechanism. Selling the packaging as though it is the intervention is nutritionally accurate and commercially misleading at the same time. 46. Hydrogen water is a premium gas that begins leaving the container the moment you open it, potentially delivering a dose of dissolved hydrogen that off-gasses into the air before you finish the glass, on its way to a tissue target that has not been established in human clinical research at concentrations achievable through drinking commercially available hydrogen water. Hydrogen water is regular water with dissolved H2 gas. The maximum dissolved hydrogen concentration achievable under normal atmospheric pressure is approximately 1.6 milligrams per liter, and it begins escaping immediately upon opening the sealed container. A 2023 systematic review found that while some small trials showed positive effects of hydrogen water on certain biomarkers, study quality was consistently low. Sample sizes were small, and results were inconsistent across trials. The proposed antioxidant mechanism involves selective neutralization of hydroxyl radicals, which is plausible in vitro. Whether that mechanism operates at relevant concentrations in human tissue from drinking hydrogen water is not demonstrated. Premium hydrogen water products are sold in sealed aluminum pouches specifically to preserve dissolved gas content. These products command $3 to $8 per serving. The dissolved hydrogen begins escaping within minutes of opening. The FDA has not approved any health claim for hydrogen water, and multiple products have received warning letters for disease claim violations. The market is substantially driven by wellness culture originating in Japan and South Korea, where regulatory frameworks and cultural health belief systems differ from the evidence standards applied in Western clinical medicine. The hydrogen water category is a premium delivery system for a gas that cannot stay in the liquid long enough to be clinically relevant at concentrations that are achievable outside a pressurized laboratory setting. You are purchasing a gas leak, calling it medicine, and paying $8 per serving for the privilege of watching it evaporate before you finish drinking it. 47. Transdermal weight loss and detox patches are attempting to move pharmacologically active molecules through a barrier that spent millions of years of evolutionary pressure becoming very good at not allowing pharmacologically active molecules to pass through, and the patch manufacturers have not solved that problem with the ingredient list currently available in the over-the-counter supplement market. Human skin is an extremely effective barrier specifically designed to prevent external substances from entering the body and internal substances from leaving it uncontrolled. Pharmaceutical transdermal drug delivery is a highly engineered process requiring specific molecular size, lipophilicity, and chemical penetration enhancers, and it has been successfully developed for a small number of compounds including nicotine, certain pain medications, and scopolamine, each requiring significant pharmaceutical investment. Common detox patch ingredients including green tea extract, B vitamins, and herbal blends do not meet the molecular criteria for effective transdermal delivery through unenhanced skin at meaningful systemic concentrations. The mechanism of toxin drawing, meaning that patches pull waste substances out through skin pores, has no anatomical or physiological basis. Sweat pores are not outflow pathways for systemic metabolic waste, and no regulatory or scientific body has identified a mechanism by which a patch applied externally could draw specified substances from internal circulation through intact skin. Some products cite the discoloration of the worn patch as visible evidence of toxin removal. That discoloration is the result of chemical reactions between patch ingredients and skin moisture, not extracted physiological waste. The FDA has taken enforcement action against multiple transdermal detox and weight loss patch manufacturers for unsubstantiated claims. A detox patch on your skin is a sticker with ambitions that exceed its chemistry. Your skin evolved over millions of years to be an excellent barrier. An Instagram advertisement did not overcome that evolution. The only thing consistently passing through is the charge to your credit card. 48. Colloidal silver was definitively ruled not generally recognized as safe or effective by the FDA in 1999 for any condition, which is a regulatory statement that ended the legal drug market for the product and launched a supplement market that has operated in parallel ever since, by making structure function claims rather than drug claims while clearly implying antibiotic equivalence to the consumer. The FDA's 1999 final rule stated that colloidal silver products cannot be legally marketed as drugs for any indication. Argyria is a permanent bluish-gray discoloration of the skin, nails, and mucous membranes caused by silver deposits in tissue following excessive silver consumption. It is irreversible. Multiple case reports document this outcome in individuals who consume colloidal silver supplements over extended periods. Silver does have genuine antimicrobial properties that are used medically in wound dressings, burn treatment, and certain medical device coatings. Those are controlled topical applications at specified concentrations developed through pharmaceutical research, not orally consumed supplements. No clinical trial has established an effective therapeutic dose of oral colloidal silver for any infectious or inflammatory condition. The human body has no known physiological requirement for silver. Colloidal silver can interact with the absorption of certain antibiotics, including quinolones and tetracyclines, potentially reducing their efficacy against the infections it is being used alongside them to treat. The product continues to be sold in the United States as a dietary supplement because the 1994 regulatory framework created a legal category that does not require pre-market safety or efficacy demonstration, and the language on current products is carefully maintained just below the threshold that would reclassify them as drugs. The FDA declared it unsafe and ineffective in 1999. The packaging found a different legal category. The product has not changed. The consumer walking past it in 2024 is encountering a compliance workaround presented as a remedy. 49. Essential oils marketed for internal consumption are concentrated enough to be pharmacologically active, which is exactly what makes the completely natural, completely safe framing used in their marketing both misleading about risk and inaccurate about mechanism. Essential oils are typically 50 to 100 times more concentrated than the plant material they are derived from. Concentration does not equal safety, and the toxic dose thresholds for several essential oils are dangerously close to claimed therapeutic doses when consumed orally without the dilution controls used in topical applications. Tea tree oil is classified as toxic when ingested, with documented cases of seizures, confusion, and neurological symptoms from accidental and intentional consumption. It continues to circulate in wellness communities as a remedy for internal use. Pennyroyal oil has been promoted in alternative health contexts as a traditional remedy and has caused multiple deaths from acute liver failure following oral consumption. The FDA does not regulate essential oils as dietary supplements unless they are specifically marketed with structure-function health claims. Most are sold as cosmetics or aromatherapy products, creating a regulatory gap through which internal use recommendations travel without triggering the scrutiny that drug claims would require. Multi-level marketing companies are the primary distribution channel for essential oils, marketed with food-grade or pharmaceutical-grade designations for internal use, creating a financial incentive structure that rewards expanded claim-making rather than clinical validation. Poison control centers in the United States receive thousands of calls annually related to essential oil ingestion, involving both children and adults experiencing adverse effects from products described as completely natural. Pharmaceutical grade on an essential oil label is a marketing term, not an FDA classification. Consuming a compound concentrated enough to be antimicrobial in a diffuser because a sales consultant described it as food grade is a decision that deserves more scrutiny than the product's aesthetic packaging typically invites. 50. BDNF boosting supplements are selling you the promise of improved neuroplasticity through a mechanism that requires a protein to cross the blood-brain barrier after oral ingestion, and the blood-brain barrier has a consistent and well-documented position on that proposal, which is no. Brain-derived neurotrophic factor is a protein. Proteins cannot cross the blood-brain barrier intact when consumed orally. The same fundamental digestion barrier that prevents oral HGH and oral peptides from reaching their intended tissues applies here with equivalent force. No supplemental delivery mechanism currently available in the over-the-counter market has solved this problem. The activities most consistently demonstrated to raise central BDNF levels in humans are aerobic exercise, which has been replicated across dozens of independent studies, caloric restriction, and quality sleep. None of those require purchasing a product. Supplement marketing in this category frequently references lion's mane mushroom studies showing increased nerve growth factor, which is a different neurotrophin from BDNF, produced through a different mechanism and also not demonstrably crossing the blood-brain barrier from the periphery. The marketing conflates different proteins and different delivery mechanisms to imply a coherent brain enhancement pathway that the actual biology does not support. Peripheral BDNF levels measurable in blood can increase with some interventions, but peripheral and central BDNF reflect different physiological pools, and peripheral measurement does not reliably indicate what is occurring in brain tissue. Antidepressant medications increase central BDNF through downstream signaling effects from neurotransmitter receptor activity, a mechanism that is fundamentally different from attempting to orally supplement a protein that cannot survive the journey to its target. The fastest, most reliably evidenced way to raise your BDNF is cardiovascular exercise. That information has been available in the peer-reviewed literature for years. It is free. It does not require a monthly subscription. Your neurons will not notice the difference between the capsule and the absence of one. 51. The broad, anti-inflammatory supplement stack is the category where the gap between a legitimate underlying scientific concept and the commercial claims built on top of it is wide enough to lose an entire evidence base inside because inflammation is real. Chronic inflammation is genuinely associated with serious disease, and the supplement aisle's response to that association is to sell you 12 ingredients in a capsule and call it systemic coverage. Chronic low-grade inflammation is associated with cardiovascular disease, type 2 diabetes, and certain cancers in the epidemiological literature. The association is real. The intervention pathway from take this supplement stack to meaningfully alter that disease risk is far more complex and far less established than the packaging implies. C-reactive protein is commonly used as an inflammation biomarker in supplement ingredient studies. Some ingredients modestly reduce CRP levels in short-duration trials. CRP is a general acute phase reactant, not a specific measure of pathological inflammatory activity, meaning a CRP reduction is a signal in a proxy measure rather than a confirmed clinical outcome. The body's inflammatory response is context-dependent and serves essential functions in infection response, wound healing, and adaptive immunity. Non-specifically suppressing it raises questions about trade-offs that the anti-inflammatory branding does not engage with. Boswellia serrata has some of the better quality evidence in this category, with trials showing meaningful effects on osteoarthritis pain in a specific narrow application that does not generalize to claims of systemic anti-inflammatory coverage across all tissues and conditions. Multi-ingredient stacks make clinical evaluation impossible. No effect can be attributed to a specific ingredient. No adverse outcome can be traced to a source. The inflammation is the root of all disease-framing functions, primarily to expand the addressable market to include anyone who has ever felt unwell, which is a population of approximately 8 billion people. Your body's inflammatory processes do not need a 12-ingredient stack. The supplement industry needed you to believe otherwise. 51 products, one consistent pattern. If you want to see more, click the video on screen now.